Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at this Rewilding Intro webinar, where we will be presenting the work of Lille Vildmose from Denmark. This Rewilding Intro webinars are hosted by the European Rewilding Network, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about our network first, for those of you who are not familiar, since this is an open webinar. So our network is a living network made out of a variety of rewilding initiatives across Europe, as you can see in the map here. And these initiatives are supporting each other, and we are supporting them in facilitating the adoption of the best rewilding principles and practices that are happening right now. And right now, at this stage, we have 91 members all across the continent. You can see quite a big variety on the types of initiatives, but also geographically. And our latest members are a bison initiative in Azerbaijan and also a vulture initiative in Madonia, Sicily, in Italy. And we are really happy to welcome them. Membership is completely free, and you have some benefits to being a member. I'm just going to mention a few of them here. So one of them is, of course, being able to showcase your work through webinars such as this one. Also, learning webinars, which are closed webinars only for the members, as well as access to the Rewilding Europe Capital, which is loaning facility for businesses. For rewilding businesses, of course, also access to European Wildlife Comeback Fund, which is a funding facility for reintroductions, for keystone species reintroductions. And the last one that I'm going to mention is, of course, the networking and learning from other rewilding initiatives online and also sometimes in person through some in-person events that we may host. So within this European Rewilding Network, we, of course, have Lille Vildmose, which is our only at this stage Danish member, and we're really happy to have them here today. So thank you, Thomas and Jakob, for being here. They are the ones that are going to be speaking. So Jakob Palsgaard Andersen is the Deputy Director of Aage V Jensen Naturefond, which is the organization that is in charge of Lille Vildmose. And Thomas Holst Christensen is the Operations Manager, also of Aage V Jensen Naturefond. And also you will be seeing me and Kyle. So we are your hosts, and we both work for the upscaling team in Rewilding Europe, and I am the coordinator of the European Rewilding Network. This is a very simple agenda for today. First, we have the welcome and introduction, which you're seeing right now. It's already done. And next, you will be hearing from Jakob and Thomas about the work that they do at Lille Vildmose. Afterwards, we will have a short Q&A with some questions. So for that, you will want to look at the bottom of the webinar environment in your screen, and there you will see a part that says Q&A. You can press there and write the questions that you want to ask. And at the end of the presentation, me and Kyle will choose some questions and ask them to Thomas and Jakob, and we will get some answers and some clarifications. So please feel free to start asking questions whenever you want, and we will answer them at the end. So thank you so much to the both of you for being here, for taking the time to do this for us. We're really excited to hear more about the work that you do.
Thank you, Julia and Kyle. Thank you for having us. We're very fond of being part of this network. I'll just be saying a few words on the Aage V Jensen Naturefond before moving on to Lille Vildmose. We are a private organization in Denmark that comes out of a master carpenter who lived back in from 1911 to 1986. He did well while living and donated a lot of his money into working for nature. So interpreted directly from Danish, back in the 80s, our objective is nature conservation and the protection of the wild animals. What we work for today is more innovation, knowledge drive that drives nature development, partnerships, looking into new partnerships that gives us bigger opportunities to make good stuff for nature, and knowledge and experiences that strengthen people's relationship to nature. And how do we do that? Actually, we just acquire, we own and we manage land for nature. We carry out and support restoration projects, both in relation to our own nature reserves, owned by the foundation, but also on other nature areas in Denmark. We only work solely in Denmark. That's part of the objective with this foundation. And that's the other part of us. We provide support for research and dissemination projects that are related to conservation and development of nature. So every year we donate something around 7 million euros to universities and others in Denmark. That makes it quite interesting for us to manage areas, because we can go in dialogue with a lot of the universities and get a learning out of whatever they're doing research on, and actually going out to our nature reserves and doing projects. Our approach to nature management is very science-based, with an inventive approach. We're a private foundation. We can actually do something riskful and try to learn something new. We do a lot of ecosystem-oriented nature conservation, not looking very much at one species, but looking into the whole system. We call it seeking ecological integrity. And also, and I think this is just one of the main things with the rewilding, giving space for the dynamics of nature. Here we've seen a map of the reserves that we have in Denmark. This makes us the largest private landowner in the country. We have 31 areas that are combined in like these 23 places, covering almost 20,000 hectares. Our organization is altogether just a little more than 20 people. I think we're at 22 at the moment. 13 of us are managing the areas. The rest are in more the administration and the looking into the donation part. So being part of your network here is of great value to us, because we get in touch with a lot of other organizations all over Europe. So even though we only work in Denmark, we have the opportunity to work, how do you say, on another scale, for having, you know, all the network and all the good learnings from these meetings here. So I think that's all from me. We'll be moving on to the area number 4 here. I think you'll see that on the next map. So on to Thomas for more on Lille Vildmose.
Well, thanks, Jacob, and thanks, Julia. Really nice to be joining you here today. And as you can see, we are sitting in the northern part of Denmark, in the largest intact raised bog in Denmark. Altogether, we have 7,700 hectares that has been designated a national nature conservation area. Out of those, almost 8,000 hectares, 2,000 hectares are or is an intact raised bog, and it's also Natura 2000 site. And since 2013, it was also designated a Ramsar climate site. It's the only, so far, place in the world where Ramsar designation has been used for an area for its importance to climate. It's one of the largest nature restoration projects in Denmark, and so far we've also received a lot of support and in cooperation with the EU LIFE program, and we had a project running from 2011 to 2020 where the EU LIFE program helped us a lot with doing the initial work in actually putting the bog back into a natural process after parts of it have been used for mining of peat and sphagnum. I'll come back to the area how it's divided into 3 separate enclosures. But just a
Denmark is one of the most cultivated countries in the world. Only a few % of the Danish peatland remain undisturbed. However, the Danish landscape is home to one of the largest raised bogs in the Western European lowlands. Its name is Lille Vildmose. It was the first peatland in the world to be internationally designated as a protected natural area because of its ability to bind and store carbon dioxide. The designation was made under the auspices of the Ramsar Convention, which protects more than 2,000 internationally significant wetlands worldwide. The Danish raised bog is currently being restored. After decades of peat extraction, drainage, and agricultural use, the process has been reversed. The bog is no longer being drained. Bungs and boarding have been dug into ditches and canals to retain the life-giving water in the peatland. The peatland has started storing carbon again, making room for a diversity of plants and animals. The flora and nature of the peatland are quietly working away to help mankind by storing carbon. The peatland is helping to prevent rises in the atmospheric level of carbon dioxide.
Well, that was just a short introduction to some of the work that's been done so far, but we also work on all sorts of different projects and initiatives. And as you saw in the movie, one of the initial stages was to restore natural hydrology. This is not only in the bog itself, but it's also in the surrounding natural areas, including open grasslands and forested areas. We also work with fire, and I tend to say that if anyone is asking me what kind of job I have, I said it's every little boy's dream. I get to play with fire, water, guns, and big machines and big animals. And so what we can do with the fire, of course, is to simulate acute catastrophes such as wildfires. We use it also to get really to promote more fresh growth of green grasses for some of the our grazing animals. We can also use the fire in our effort to get rid of, for example, exotic species such as the Sitka spruce. When we first took over the estate, it was a lot of the area had been planted with Sitka spruce, and we are still fighting to get rid of the last of those. And fire is really efficient in that context. And we then, once we have these very big open areas, we also do some enrichment planting where we can go in and utilize our knowledge on what used to be here, what was the natural vegetation back in time. We've done some pollen analysis to make sure that we know what has been here previously. There's been a very long continuity and history of grazing, where this has been part of also the farming that has been taking place in the area, where cattle, horses, pigs, and all sorts of domestic animals have been used in the past. But the way we divided the area today, after we have bought large chunks of land, and also other of our partners in the area have also bought up some pieces of land here, is that far to the north we have the Høstemark Skov. One of the names I won't ask you to pronounce, Julia, but Høstemark Skov was the first estate that the foundation bought back in '88, when we really said that we wanted to focus our efforts on managing land on our own. It's an area of 580 hectares, where we have, as grazers, we have red deer. We also have, of course, many other species living there, but the main grazer there is the red deer. And it has been an enclosure, a nature park, since the 1930s. In what we call Mellemområdet, it translates more or less into the middle area. That's the part that has been mined. It was especially during World War II, a local, well, it's a worldwide factory today, producing cement. They needed energy, and this was a nearby source for energy, so they mined quite a lot here to have the peat for burning. And later on, extraction of sphagnum for growing different kinds of vegetables and so on also took place on a larger scale. This stopped about 20 years ago after the area was conserved. It's an area of 2,100 hectares. It's still fenced, but it's open to the public. And we have then released moose and red deer into the area since 2016. The really you say the gem of the area, that's tufted forest and raised bog. This is 4,000 hectares altogether, where about half of it is the raised bog, the intact raised bog. But the other half is grazed forest and open grasslands. And this is where we've had red deer in behind fence for about 110 years. And since mid-1920s, wild boar has also been living here. And then recently we have introduced the bison to this area. We decided that we had we looked at what kind of plant eaters we had in terms of what kind of food resources were available. We found that was fine when we had the red deer and the wild boar, but we could see that we needed probably more grazers into the area. And some of the key species that we wanted to introduce was the bison and the moose. We brought in 5 moose from nature parks in Sweden. They were released in 2016, and the following year we released another 5. We also captured animals from the areas both to the north and to the south, where we captured 24 red deer that were released into the central part of the middle area as well. And they have now grown into a population of approximately 220 animals. And the middle area is then said to probably be able to hold as much as 1,000 red deer and 40 moose if we give up the present grazing with livestock. The bison came into the area, as I mentioned, in 2021. The first animals came here in 2019, but they were released into Tofte in 21. And there were 3 animals from Denmark and 7 from the Netherlands. And then we brought an additional 5 from another site in Denmark in 2022. And we can see that they're doing quite well. They're breeding well, and we have a present stock now of 26 animals, where presently we have 6 calves, and we will probably be looking into an additional 8 or 9 calves again this coming year. We do give them supplementary food because they are on a bog area, on very poor land, so we need to supply them with minerals in order to secure their health. We've been providing them some food during winter, and but we will be looking to see how much we can scale that down to have a really wild population. We also have the wild boar, of course, living there, and this is wild boar is not permitted in Denmark as a free roaming animal. Unfortunately, there's a conflict with our farming community and a fear of African swine fever. So the few ones that are living in Denmark are living behind fences, and this is one of the specific areas where they're doing so, and they're doing a magnificent job. What we tend to do is also to highlight very much that this is not about the big 5. This is not about our eagles, our bisons, our moose, our red deer, and our wild boar. This is about all the species, the whole context, and how the bigger animals are helping us to supply to cater for a more healthy environment with as rich a nature as possible. And so we like to tell people that because we have these animals, because of what we're doing with water and fire, we can have more than 10,000 species living in an area like Tofte. And these are just some of them that you can see here. We recorded as much as almost 8,000 species in Høstemark as well. We try to monitor as much as possible of what we're doing to see how are the animals behaving, how are they utilizing the area. We have baseline investigations on a regular time frame, and we try and also monitor how does the whole structure of the area change over time. We do that in cooperation with universities and specialists that are interested to help us. And just a few examples of here working with also veterinarians on actually monitoring the health of the animals. But this is another example of how we monitor following the utilization of the area of some of our grazing animals using GPS collars that we have issued the animals with. Recently, we've also had a game changer in the context of the European rewilding community. We often talk about the importance of big predators, and fortunately, we have had one of them moving into the area all by its own. We have had a wolf living in the area now for about 2 years, 2.5 years, and it does make a change. We can see that it feeds especially on our red deer, and we look forward to see how the population of wolves can actually change also in the future. So this was a brief account of what we're doing, what we're working with, and of course we would very much like anybody who's interested in seeing more or visiting us to come forward and give us a chat, and you can find some of our contact details here. You can also, we had the pleasure of being visited by James Shooter, who is doing a podcast for Rewilding Europe, and you can find that on the internet as well, and or in one of your preferred apps, and have a listening to what Vildmose can also do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That was a great presentation, a really great summary of all of the work that you do in Aage Jensen, but specifically in Lille Vildmose. So now is the time for people to write in their questions. We already have a few. So maybe I wanted to start with one that is more about Aage Jensen. So they asked about how do you select what areas are appropriate for restoration projects and wildlife rewilding. Who do you talk to, especially when it comes to public land? I'm sure there's a lot of work there, so maybe a short answer if that's possible.
I can try. Thank you, Julia. That's a good question, and actually that is one that is puzzling us all the time, finding the right places here. So we actually do work with the universities to try and do some GIS analysis on where is the right place for putting these areas. And one of the features here is the size of the area. We're not working with, if I could choose from now on, I would only buy and manage areas that are at least 1,000 hectares in size. And that's quite difficult. So just finding the right ones at the right size is not easy, but we're working with that all the time, and we're not finished buying and managing areas in Denmark. We're still moving on. And I didn't get to say that in the start, but we've been doing this for 35 years now.
Yeah. A lot of experience and still a lot of work that you're still doing, and it's really inspiring, honestly. So there's a lot of questions about the animals, but first I wanted to, because then we'll go into that and there will be many. There was one about the fire. Do you use fire in the whole area? Also in the book part, how is the fire being managed spatially?
We don't use the fire in the whole bog area. That's simply because that would be too dangerous, and we could start a bog fire that could go on for months. So we use it, and we do that in cooperation with the local municipalities. We do it in early spring, and we're not allowed to burn in the drier part of the year simply because of the risk of the fire spreading. Efficiently, it could be or it could be done more efficiently if we did it during the summer, but we burn patches at a time, a few hectares at a time, and then we look to see how the animals will then also take over the management of the area afterwards.
Okay.
Brief answer.
Yes. Okay, there's just a lot of questions, to be honest, but I'm just going to move on to some of the ones relating to the animals. So we have one from France saying, is a supplementary really needed when it comes to the bison? Looks like your area has enough variety for them to survive, and comparing with other bison landscapes. were they too well?
Yeah, it's a good question, and something that we really we are struggling with, or we have. This is a great focus for us because we have enough food for them, but we don't have enough quality of the food so far. But we're still trying to find how we can minimize the supplementary feeding. We do need to give them minerals because we're on such poor and acid soils. So key minerals such as selenium and copper are not available to the animals, and that has a great impact on how they breed and how they can utilize the forage that's available to them. And we do that in very close cooperation with our veterinarians and feeding advisors. And the goal is to avoid feeding altogether in the future.
Great. So kind of related with the animals, and Jill is asking, how many grazers can your area support? If there are few predators, do you shoot them? How do you deal with the population? I think you still haven't had to do that, but what is maybe the plan? And do you leave the carcasses for birds of prey?
We can, well, in an area the size that we have here, and with it's not all of it accessible. We will of course have animals that fall dead and we can't find them. If we shoot an animal, we are obliged by law, unfortunately, that we need to pick it up and carry it away. But we have a permission to leave parts of the animals for our eagles, so we can do so that we can actually give them access to parts of the carcasses. We will not be controlling predators at the moment. We don't control our foxes. And certainly as we only have one wolf, we won't be controlling that one either. We hope to see more of them moving in, and we hope that they can help us control populations of red deer as they grow, especially in the middle area, where we are looking into a scenario with as much as 1,000 red deer. This will be quite a task to start calling them for controlling them in the future, and the wolf could certainly help us with that.
Yes, I can totally imagine that. Then sorry, there's several really interesting questions. There's another one asking if you move the animals around, which really fits into the one that you just.
No, at the moment, as I briefly tried to explain, we have 3 separate areas, and the goal is that we should join all 3 together, and then the animals should be free to roam between them. We have the issue that I briefly mentioned with the wild boar, that it's an animal of concern to our farming community, so we will not be having wild boars in direct contact with the visitors, simply because of the risk of contamination with swine fever and other diseases. But otherwise, they will be free to roam in the area, and if given the chance, we hope that the area can even be expanded in the future.
Yeah. So maybe one last question from Rena. When sourcing animals such as Eurasian elk, how do they adjust after coming from more farm or zoo-like enclosures, likely being fed and handled, blah, blah, blah? Do they interact with humans anymore as a result?
We do see that, especially the bulls, the moose bulls, they have been less shy than what we want. We put up signs and we try to teach our visitors. It's only the middle area that's generally open to the public, and they really come there to see the moose. It's a priority species for most visitors. But we try to tell them to avoid direct contact and keep a distance of a minimum 50 meters. But sometimes the animals can't read the signs, and they do get closer to the audience from time to time. And then we try to when we see it, we try to tell people to move away. We don't want tame animals, and it's a risk for both the animal and the audience.
Yes, I can totally imagine. Thank you. So there's a lot more questions. My thought would be, if you have any questions that you really want answered, I put in the chat my email, Jacob, Thomas, and also the link to Lille Vildmose. So you're free to contact us for any further questions. But we are going to be closing down now because we're exactly on time, and I think the main points were already hit, and we're really thankful for everyone that has been here with us. Thank you so much to Jakob and Thomas. It's been really a pleasure having you and listening to all of the great work that you've been doing, and we can't wait to keep up with all the great work that's being done.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
You're
Thank you
very
both.
welcome. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.